You're listening to the Otis Jiry channel.
C-9 by CORBIN EICHHORN. Performed by Otis Jiry. I don't give a damn where you go. Just get the hell out. A powerful voice boomed from the doorway, and several random objects flew through the air, missing Alex as he stormed off down the driveway. His father had always been a raging alcoholic and had a habit of throwing tantrums, but this one was the worst yet. Alex had failed history 3 grading periods in a row, breaking his promise to at least pass his classes. It's not my fault. Mr. Thomas is the most boring and confusing teacher ever, Alex muttered under his breath as he pulled on his hood, fighting off the chill of the mid-November air. Pulling out his phone, the steaming teen dialed up his good friend Red. Yo, dude, I need a place to crash for the weekend. My parents kicked me out again. Alex sighed into the phone. No problem, bro, I got you covered. His friend replied on the other end. Just come on over to my place. My mom's gone on another week-long bender, so she won't be home to care. Alex could always rely on Red ever since they were merely 9 years old. Coming from similarly broken homes, Red and Alex had a mutual understanding of each other, finding comfort in each other's company, along with any mind-altering substance they could get their hands on. By the time Alex arrived at Red's beaten-up shack of a house, Red had already invited other guests. Upon opening the door, Alex saw who had shown up. Before him was Red, a short and lanky ginger with skin as pale as paper. He was smiling wildly, showing off the gaps in his teeth from one too many fist fights. Inside the house, Alex spotted Eric, a massive, stout 18-year-old who was like the older brother of the whole group. His beard grew in when he was 12, so Eric always had looked like a huge mountain man. Lastly, but certainly not least, there was Patricia, or Patty, as Alex called her. Patty was Eric's little sister of 2 years, and while he didn't enjoy what she did in her spare time, he wanted to keep her safe since she had a bad habit of catching the attention of thug types. While younger than most of the group, Patty stood a good 6 inches taller than Alex, but she never wasted time rubbing that in his face. Hey, Shorty, glad you could make it to the party. Red's got some good shit for us tonight, chimed Patty as she sat on the stained couch, sipping from a flask. Smiling softly, Alex stepped in as Red closed the door behind him. The lady speaks the truth, my good man. I have procured a new brand of substances from yonder pipe shop. Behold. Red held out several packets, all labeled the same. C-9, cotton candy clouds. Read the packaging, depicting what would look to be clouds made of cotton candy, as the name suggests. C-9, what on earth is that? Alex inquired, just as Patty draped her arms over his shoulders. Oh, C-9. It's the newest and hottest thing on the block, Daddy-O. One puff of this, you'll be as high as the peak of Mount Everest. Red replied while giving Alex the finger guns, changing his mannerisms as per usual. It's a synthetic supposed to mimic the effects of pot, but it's crazy cheap. Patty added, and Red nodded in agreement, tossing the packages to Eric, who sat in the oversized recliner, which still looked small compared to him. Eric, my man, do me the honors and stuff those pipes for me. Red chimed in as he strikes an overly dramatic pose. Eric grimaced, signing to Red that he was tired of him bringing in new things around his sister. Chill, bro, it's totally safe. It wouldn't be legal if it was dangerous, right? Patty retorted with a chuckle, drawing a sigh of defeat from Eric. He couldn't say no to his little sister. While Eric started stuffing the pipes with what looked like sawdust, Patty pulled Alex to the couch and pushed him down, sitting next to him, but clutching his arms. My friends, tonight we explore new territories, announced the overly zealous Red as he took a stuffed pipe, wasting no time in lighting it up and puffing hard. The foul stench of burnt cotton candy filled the air, making Alex's nose scrunch up. Receiving his own, Alex placed the pipe in his mouth. Patty lit it for him, and he inhaled. Burning smoke filled his lungs, scorching everything it touched all the way down, eliciting violent coughs from Alex. Drinking water to expel the horrendous taste from his mouth, Alex watched as Patty and Eric joined in, taking puffs of their own. For many minutes, the group felt nothing, taking repeated puffs on the pipes in hopes of speeding up the process. "Aye, Red, I thought you said this shit was good," Alex scoffed, dumping out the ashes from his chili pepper-shaped pipe. "Man, I was told this was the hottest stuff right now. Maybe we just can't feel it since—" Alex looked up at Red, expecting him to finish his sentence, but all Alex could see on his friend's face was nothing. It wasn't that he was expressionless, but he had no face. Blinking rapidly, Alex realized Red still had facial features, but they were blurred out as if he was in one of those police shows where witnesses wanted to keep their identities concealed. Alex couldn't remember Red's face for the life of him. Looking around, he realized that the same occurrence was happening with Patty and Eric. Numbness overtook Alex. He neither felt nor heard anything, aside from a steady and rapid thumping from his chest like a muffled drum. Soon after, his vision started to fade to blackness. It was a warm and comforting darkness like one has when he falls asleep. The tranquil feeling of security was quickly lost as Alex realized he was back home, staring into the scarred door to the hallway closet. A sturdy-looking board leaned against the doorframe, looking to fit in metal hooks screwed into the wall on either side of the door. Dread overtook the boy as he felt an imposing force behind him, pushing him toward the slowly opening closet. "I told you, boy, you mouth off to me again, I'd put you in the locker. Consider yourself lucky." A deep, rumbling voice bellowed from the force pushing him through the doorway. Panic set in as Alex struggled against the force, but, much like an animal fighting against the current of a river, his efforts were in vain. Behind him, the door swung shut and a loud thud of wood hitting metal rung out, casting Alex into silence and darkness. Pounding on the door, Alex cried out in fear, begging for freedom, but the old-world wooden door held fast, not relenting to the boy's feeble attempts to break it down. Alex screamed until his voice went hoarse. Then all he could produce was a pathetic squeak. With the will to fight broken, Alex slumped against the door and silence fell upon him. With the claustrophobic closet, which acted as Alex's prison, no light shone from under the door, drowning the boy in a sea of darkness as thick as pitch. Hours upon hours of solitude in the endless void of shadow took its toll on him, scrambling his sense of time and reality. Just as countless memories of days spent in the prison of the closet flooded Alex's mind, suddenly the imposing claustrophobic grip on him was gone. Quickly, he got to his feet, scanning his surroundings. Much like in the closet, Alex stood in a smothering darkness until he turned to see the azure glow of a fountain. An oddly out-of-place fixture in the dark, it stood tall and proud, a spire resembling a steeple to a Gothic cathedral, with many gargoyles that spewed glowing water from their mouths, but made no splashing of water on water. Atop the granite fountain stood a figure, human in shape, but completely devoid of any features. No hair, clothes, nose, ears, not even any eyes. Just a wide grin, a row of bleached and jagged teeth splitting open the tightly pulled onyx-colored skin on the face, an expression far too wide to be anywhere near human. In the faint glow of the luminous water, Alex could see the skin on the being's forehead split open, with a sickening tear. Putrid gray fluid leaked from the newly formed wound. Splitting further open, the break in skin revealed an inhumanly large eyeball the size of a baseball, glaring back at Alex. Before any words could be spoken, the solid footing under Alex gave way, plunging him into murky water, forcing him to hold his breath. Coldness gripped Alex as he heard faint voices, though he could not make out what was said. Somehow, the voices seemed oddly familiar. Several hands pushed against his face and chest, growing more frantic as time went on. Alex couldn't move to fend off the groping hands. They felt like they were gripping every part of him. A burning sensation grew in his chest as his lungs ached for air. Voices grew frantic and jumbled, like a crowd of people yelling over each other. Suddenly, the hands grabbed him all over, and Alex felt them pulling him through the water quickly. An overpowering force slammed him on his back at the bottom of whatever body of water he was getting dragged through. As quickly as it all began, the water vanished, and Alex took in a breath of stale, musty air. Looking up, he saw ceiling tiles and felt the cold, hard tile of the school hall floor. Many students muttered to each other in tongues Alex had never heard before. Having pulled himself to his feet, he swung his head around to see all the students staring at him, their gazes piercing straight through him. The stares surrounded Alex. He could feel himself getting impaled by judgment as the muttering rose in volume. Through the cacophony of noise, Alex could make out one word: face. His hands immediately shot up to his face, and he felt something like slime with bits of something floating in the ooze. With haste, Alex bolted to the restroom, which was luckily unoccupied, and once inside, he flipped on the light. Horror struck Alex as he finally saw what all the other students were talking about. His face was melting, much like a candle in front of a blowtorch. His skin turned a sickly gray and began to peel off his face. His nose dangled from a thread of muscle as the rancid odor filled his open nasal cavity. Though Alex watched in horror, he felt no pain. The decaying flesh of his face felt alien and wrong. Fingers dug into flesh and tore it away in a frenzy. Globs of decaying skin and muscle covered the porcelain sink in a gray fluid. His heart pounded painfully hard as he frantically clawed at his face, the same gray fluid oozing from between the muscle fibers and dripping onto the sink. Vision in his left eye faded as the eyeball melted into a jelly, slipping from its socket and into the sink. Nails scraped against bone as the last remaining shreds of flesh melted away. Using his index finger, Alex pried out his right eye, and with an audible pop, the eyeball was ejected from its home and fell down the drain. Alex's vision followed the eyeball down the drain into complete darkness. Then, once again, Alex stood before the fountain. The ominous figure was still standing motionless atop it. His hands frantically groped his face in an inspection, finding his features to be untouched, as normal as usual. Returning his gaze to the ebony figure, Alex saw that several more wounds tore through the ray of the being's skin, revealing piercing eyes all over the body. From the head to the legs, no part of the figure's body was left untouched by the multiplying eyes. "Alex!" A familiar feminine voice cried out as Alex was shaken awake. The bright kitchen light blinded him temporarily. "Patty?" he thought to himself, covering his eyes with his hands. All Alex could feel was a mind-crushing headache. It felt like his skull might split open from internal pressure. The cold tile floor under him felt foreign and new, as if it was the first time he had felt it, or anything for that matter. "I told you he smoked too much. He passed out right away. Damn it, Red!" The feminine voice barked as Alex's head was cradled in jarringly cold hands. Forcing his eyes open, Alex peered out into the room around him. Having expected his friends, Alex was instead greeted with the same blurry figures from before. All three stood above him. There was one feature on each figure he could make out, those inhumanly large skulls, the mouths stretching ear to ear. What a loser. It only took a few hits and he was out like a light. Pathetic. A male voice sneered as Alex's head was violently twisted and forced to face sideways. It felt as if an inhuman force was holding him down and pressing on the side of his head. "Loser, nobody likes you. We only let you hang out with us because we pity you. Do yourself and everyone a favor. Just die already." Agony swept over Alex The pain he no longer felt a force pushing out, but an even mightier force pushing in. Alongside the pressure in his head, Alex felt jabs and kicks through his sides, and his ribs audibly snapped under the force. Pain shot up his spine. Alex tried to fight back to break free and escape, but the pressure in his head was tremendous, keeping him pinned to the cold, filthy floor. Your parents hate you. We hate you. Why are you so pathetic? Waste of skin. Worthless. Words of hatred filled Alex's ears as the boot on his head pressed down like a vice. Bolts of pain ripped through his head as his skull splintered and cracked under the pressure. His vision faded to red as the pressure in his head ruptured all the blood vessels in his eyes. The sanguine fluid seeped from his nose, mouth, ears, and eyes. Any urge to fight was crushed as a sickening crack filled his ears as the skull gave way. With a blink, Alex was back once again to the fountain. While his head was very much in one piece, the pain of the skull crushing still lingered, keeping Alex from standing. Water rippled and splashed around Alex's prone form, and he felt movement in the shallow sea. Suddenly, a long, slimy tentacle wrapped itself around Alex's leg and hoisted him in the air. Catching a good look at the tentacle that held him, Alex saw onyx-black skin, much like the figure atop the fountain. It was even adorned with several sporadically placed grinning mouths and glaring eyes. What is real? Is this a dream? Will you ever wake up? Do you even remember how to? A swarm of whispers bombarded Alex as he ascended. Having been hoisted up, Alex hung upside down in front of the dark figure, their faces a mere inches apart. Alex gagged as a new eye split open from the forehead of the being. The stench of rotting meat slapped him in the nose. Within the same socket, the grapefruit-sized eye split, like dividing cells into smaller eyes repeatedly, until the singular socket was filled with hundreds of tiny, writhing eyes, all looking in different directions. A hole opened up under Alex, and water rushed into the new pathway as the tentacle loosened its grip on his leg, and he fell, landing hard on his back in a heap. Dazed, Alex looked around and felt something familiar. Grain. All around him, grain. Realization hit him, and Alex knew he was inside a grain silo. One summer, when he was 6, he'd played with his cousins on his uncle's farm. He had climbed to the top of the silo, trying to hide from his cousin by jumping into the grain silo. What he did not realize was that grain can act like quicksand, and it engulfed him rapidly. Alex kicked and screamed as he sunk deeper into the grain. He heard his cousin's voices calling him from the top of the silo. Each kernel of grain put a tiny amount of pressure on Alex, each trying to push him down. All together they forced the boy deeper. Having flailed his arms, Alex tried as hard as he could to free himself from the impeding prison, only succeeding in burying himself deeper. Taking a final breath, Alex's head plunged underneath the grain. The grain faded away from grain to soil, and Alex's eyes snapped open, only for him to be blinded by freshly disturbed dirt. Clarity hit him as he clamped his eyes shut, trying to wipe his eyes, but his hands were held in place by the earth around him. His lungs began to burn for air. Each attempt to draw in breath was met with more dirt. A chorus of voices screamed at him to escape, to go up. With burning muscles, Alex fought to lift his arms. Though it took all of his effort, he managed to shift through the loose soil. Next came his legs, the dirt proving a formidable foe to overcome. Worming his way up, Alex felt the surface just out of reach. Then, once again, Alex stood before the fountain, but with eyes of various sizes surrounding him on all sides in the darkness. The entire shallow sea was alive with swarms of giant, rotting tentacles. Each with their own mouths all spouted hateful insults and mockery. The fountain ran gray with the same putrid fluid, pouring from the black figure that was now perched atop the highest gargoyle. All the statues in the fountain turned their heads in unison and stared directly at Alex, all yelling in alien tongues. A deafening cacophony of screams barreled into Alex, forcing him to clap his hands over his ears. The floating eyes glowed red with hatred as the grin on the black figure grew wider and wider, splitting what remained of its face until Alex heard a sickening crack and the bottom jaw flopped open, revealing thousands of rows of undulating razor-sharp fangs extending all the way down the abyss that was its throat. Alex sat up in the bed and screamed, flailing his arms in a cold sweat. "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Calm down there, buddy!" A familiar voice sounded, and a door opened. Alex stopped and saw that he was in Red's room, lying in his bed. Turning, Alex saw that his best friend, standing at the door with a steaming bowl of what Alex presumed to be soup. "You all right, buddy?" Red inquired, walking over to Alex and sitting on the bed. "You scared the crap out of all of us, man. You completely passed out." Alex rubbed his eyes as the haze started to lift from his mind. He suddenly recalled that the night before, he and his friends had tried the new C-9 crap. "Bro, I think you need to sober up a while. That screwed you up. You've been out for the past 2 days. Red added as he looked deep in Alex's eyes, checking to make sure his friend was all right. A rumbling sound came from Alex's stomach, and malnutrition setting in. "I knew you'd be hungry by the time you woke up, so I made you soup," Red said with a smile as he handed Alex the bowl. A wave of relief swept over Alex as he took everything in. He was out of that hell, done with that trip. Maybe he should take Red's advice and sober up for a while. Can do him some good. Alex had this thought as he brought the spoon into his mouth and immediately spat it out. Dirt! Alex was eating dirt. The once mouth-watering scent of soup was replaced with the musty scent of soil. Alex blinked and he was instantly back in darkness, gasping for air only for his nostrils to be filled with more loose soil. He'd never left this hole in the ground. He'd imagined all of the events in his friend's room. His lungs burned for air and his muscles ached for the lack of oxygen. Panic set in as Alex flailed in the dirt, digging his way up once more in his mind as it swam. Visions of moments flashed before his eyes. The long night spent in the locker, the beatings his father never spared him from, the apathetic looks his mother gave him, the time he soiled his pants in class by accident, walking down dark alleyways at night with a homeless man following him in search of drugs. These and many more flooded Alex's mind while he fought for survival. He felt cold evening air in his hand as he broke to the surface, gripping stable ground as he pulled with all his might. His muscles began to fail him, deprived of oxygen and overtaxed with the effort. All thought slowed to a crawl as a biting cold slowly enveloped Alex, drawing him deeper into a sleep he couldn't fight anymore. The sound of birds chirping stirred Alex awake. His eyes fluttered open as golden sunlight poured through his window and into his room. Sitting up quickly, Alex felt the clean linens of his bed. Out? For good? Is this just another dream, a figment of my imagination? Well, it felt real enough, so that was good enough. Alex spent the next half hour collecting his thoughts, remembering the events of the previous night in vague detail. He honestly couldn't tell whether or not what he went through was a hallucination, a dream, or, even more haunting of a thought, reality. After dressing himself and grabbing his phone, Alex noticed a small light signaling a new message. Clicking on the screen, Alex saw the new message was from Red. "Hope you made it home all right. Last night was nuts, bro. Be sure to come grab your hat." Alex rubbed his eyes as he shut off the screen, pocketed the cell phone, and stood up to dress. It was then that he noticed he was in a new, clean set of clothes. Disregarding questions surrounding the origin of his new outfit, Alex set off towards Red's house. When he arrived and knocked on the door, Alex quickly realized that Red wasn't home. Using a spare key under a rock near the door, Alex let himself in. Man, this place is trashed. More so than usual. Broken glass and candy wrappers laid scattered all over the floor, painting an odd picture of what had occurred merely a few hours earlier. Spotting his hat on the couch, Alex walked over and picked up his cap. Then he stopped. frozen in place. Slowly turning his head, Alex looked out the back sliding glass door, noting a large hole in the backyard, complete with scattered and freshly dug dirt. Alex's heart sank. That hole wasn't there the day before. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to this story in its entirety. If you enjoy what you hear and what I do and would like to support me and my efforts, visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/Otis Jiry. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button and subscribe today, and share this video with everyone on your social media. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Again, thank you for listening and have a great day. God bless you.